guys, it's Sugar and Jeff again.
Hello.
We're going to keep talking about what we've been watching. No more spoilers.
Our definition of spoilers is very different. I'm trying to sell people on something, and you kind of have to give a little bit. You can't just be like, yeah, it's good, go watch it. I don't want to tell you anything. It's good.
This isn't a first impressions video or like a deep analysis. This is what we're watching and basically giving the gist.
We can tag it with spoilers then.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
Fair enough.
Period. Unless it's like a really old anime you want to talk about, I think that's fair game. But the newer stuff you don't spoil. Unless it's
Goku dies in Dragon Ball Z.
Oh my god. Driving me crazy. Anywho. The other one we're watching together is Boruto. That's what we talked about in the last video that we were going to talk about, but back on track. Mm-hmm. Boruto was actually a surprise for me because I was like, oh god, it's going to be horrible. She's going to ride on the tails of Naruto and it's going to be this mess. And actually, we've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been good so far.
Yeah, I've been reading both the manga and the anime, and they're two very separate things at this point in time. I'm not sure if they plan to converge or if they're just going to be different. I don't know.
Get the filler now instead of later.
The filler now.
Oh, Naruto filler.
Oh, not again. But it's been very enjoyable. I liked all the characters. I like who they kind of paired together and who had kids. Mm-hmm. I like kind of the friendships that have started, the fact that there's still early unanswered questions that we're excited to find out about. But yeah, I find we're not as excited as when we watched Naruto, but
no.
It was a surprise that we liked it as much as we did.
I mean, it's... Naruto, the anime always did certain things very well. They did combat very well. Mm-hmm. They did emotion quite well. And there was no reason to suspect that they wouldn't do that with Boruto. So you knew that there was always going to be moments in the anime that you were always going to be excited about.
Right.
I'm not going to lie that when it came to Naruto, eventually it got to the point in Shippuden where I was watching moments. I would skip out on some stuff, especially the filler.
Oh, you're a skipper.
And, of course. I made it through all of the filler for the original Naruto. No, I'm not doing that to myself with Shippuden or with Boruto. The best thing I guess that I can say about Boruto, and I'm very happy that they're doing that, is how Boruto as a character echoes his father a lot. But in the same vein, it brings about
resentment.
Yeah, there's resentment there, and it puts him into a situation that you never saw Naruto in, and it puts Naruto into a situation that he doesn't really know what to do. Right. He says it in an episode later on,
where he's like, I never had a dad. Yeah.
I don't know how to be a father.
Yeah,
he knows how to be a protector. He knows how to. I mean, I guess the way that I would say it is he's everybody's father. At this point,
well, right. He's the Hokage.
He's the Hokage. He takes care of everybody.
Right.
He doesn't know why or how his relationship needs to be different with his kids as opposed to everybody. He's like, I protect everybody. Like that's my job, and I think that's probably what he would see his job being as a father as well.
Right.
And so it's nice to see them acknowledge that. Where I don't know if they did in the manga. I haven't read a lot of the manga, and that's refreshing to see. It's nice to bring the stakes down a little bit, in the sense.
Well, we know they're going to get amped up again. It's just now.
The very first 10 minutes of that, you see what an eventual final conflict is going to be and what's happening around it and whatnot. The thing that worries me about it a tiny bit, just a tiny bit. Mm-hmm. Anybody who knows Avatar: The Last Airbender and then Korra, we see. I felt like Korra hit too hard sometimes on the whole idea of like, well, times have changed and now we've got all this new technology and it kind of lost itself a little bit in that notion as opposed to the strong thing about The Last Airbender was always the characters and the fact that they were likable and that they were very different from each other and whatnot. And it felt like Korra kind of got away from that. Naruto was best when it had all of the Konoha 9 were all very different characters. We understood everything about them. And it got worse as we moved along, and it kind of got into a focal point of it just being about Naruto and everybody else who had to have godlike powers, and that was it. So lowering the stakes again and making it again sort of about school and having a lot of characters around is great, but I don't know if I'm necessarily liking the idea that I think they're going to be having this like new technology versus old school ideology, and
they have started doing that.
Yeah, it's done to death in lots of other anime. It's nothing that we've never seen before, and there's a lot of pitfalls in that, which worries me a little bit. I hope that with Boruto they don't hit that too hard, and that maybe comes right at the very end. Like even in The Incredibles, there was a little bit about that, which was that yeah, you guys are all super powered. I can just make inventions that make everybody super powerful. So it's not an idea that necessarily needs to be explored, especially within Naruto, where I was kind of happy that they didn't have new technology. I like the fact they didn't have cell phones and all this sort of stuff, and now they suddenly do within 15 years? I don't even know what the time skip is.
I was about to say, I don't remember the time difference.
It can't be more than 20. Because Naruto is still a fairly young man, so it can't be more than 20 years, and it feels like the same jump that you got between Avatar and Korra, and that was like 60 or 70 years or something like that. So I don't know. There's a little bit of trepidation. I have a little bit of trepidation.
Well, it's not in the sense. Again, no spoilers. It's not like in the sense of Avatar where. It was a lot of changes. A lot of things changed, like industrial-wise, vehicle-wise, anything. I feel like it's the places where you see the change is in some people, again, this is the manga as well, I'm referring to, is the fact that we see that a lot of people are starting to believe that you can be a ninja by using technology and using that to your advantage than actually having skill. And obviously that's a huge no-no for Naruto. He doesn't believe in that. He doesn't want any of that. But it's still the fact that there's a mentality of people who think this is a good idea. So I don't know where it'll go completely. Obviously it's going to be an aspect of the show or down the road, because I think it's more in the manga than the anime at this point about that aspect. But it's still enjoyable for me. I don't find it's been as bad as I expected it to be.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't hit the highs of Naruto. Like, we're probably like 3 episodes behind right now, so it's not something that we are absolutely gung-ho. We have to watch this every week. We have to keep up to date, like we are with our other shows.
My Hero Academia.
My Hero Academia and Hunter x
religiously
Hunter.
watching it every week.
And like,
excuse me.
I would say the ones that we hit every week without question are My Hero Academia, except for when they take 2 weeks off.
Hey, they need a break.
Hunter x Hunter and Restaurant to Another World. We hit those every week without fail. Like, there would have to be some sort of apocalypse for that not to happen for us.
We get busy, or we get sick, or whatever.
We'd stay up till 3 in the morning if we had to watch it.
Depends.
And Rick and Morty, but that's something different.
That's not anime, but we love Rick and Morty. Love it. So anyways, we finished talking about Boruto. What else have we watched together? Oh, welcome to the Ballroom.
I was about to say, we have very different opinions on this.
Okay. I'm sure I could make a whole video on it. I guess I can go into some of it now. Welcome to the Ballroom. My problem with it, it's funny, my initial thought was, dear God, please don't let this be an exact replica of Yuri on Ice. And then after watching a couple episodes, I was like, dear God, let it be more like Yuri on Ice. Because, like, it doesn't measure up. And I know they're 2 different sports, they're 2 different events, but I used to be a competitive dancer, and it drives me insane. Some of the stuff. Like, I find that the show, like, I hear some YouTubers like, this has so much potential, this is so great. But I like, so far it hasn't shown me a lot of potential. It's shown me like things that I should be scared of. Like, it doesn't look like it's going to be in my opinion. Obviously, it's always a person's opinion. But Welcome to the Ballroom, it's just, it starts off trying to make itself different than Yuri on Ice. I know they both have different mangas and they came out at different times. So I'm not going to say one copied the other in that sense. I mean in the sense that it is slightly different story-wise, where he didn't exactly want to be a dancer initially. It just kind of happened, and then he ran into his coach. His coach, like, one of my problems with Welcome to the Ballroom is out of many, is the fact that a lot of characters flip-flop quickly, and that drives me insane. Where, like, the coach seems supportive, then he's an asshole, and then he doesn't want to help, and then he just puts people in the role of, like, coaching for him. Then he kind of wants to help, and it kind of pisses me off. And then we have the lead girl, where she's, like, kind of a dick, and then she's really nice, based in the hour of, like, a 12-hour span. And,
they justify that one a little bit.
Oh,
Not enough for sugar, but definitely it was fine.
Not enough for me. Like, they have already shots of fan service. Ones that, like, okay, let me explain my thoughts on fan service really quickly. I don't mind fan service. If it has a reason, or is kind of funny, or has a purpose, I don't mind at all.
I mean, Yuri on Ice had a lot of fan service, but I feel like
it was for the lulz, I think. It was just more
well,
of like
and it
humor,
was also
it
was also to kind of showcase this unique relationship between, you know,
well, the relationship,
between the characters.
Just this character, kind of the fact that he's very, like, outgoing, and it fit well because it was so funny. But in this case, we have shots of fan service that just make no damn sense. They're just there to be there, and it's
they're there
so
to be titillating, yeah.
Annoying because it's just nauseating to see it because there's no purpose for it other than to just be there. I'm trying to think of a good example of fan service right now.
Oh, well, when he walks in on her changing.
No, that's a bad example. I'm thinking of another anime. Sorry. Oh, obviously the scene that drove me nuts the most was those two scenes I can think of. There's one scene where an episode opens and there's one girl's boobs jiggling just for no reason whatsoever, and it's just the most awkward, like, 10 seconds of your life. And then there's this shot of her in the changing room, and you know what? If you catch someone changing, that's one thing. But it's like, if you look back at that scene for, like, a good, like, 5 seconds, no one undresses that way. It was just meant for a total, like, fan service shot.
Titillation. I like the word titillation.
Titillation. And it drove me nuts. What else drives me nuts? It's the fact that, you know, the opener and closer, I don't find all that great. Like, the opening is not bad, but compared to the outro, ouch, it's bad, in my opinion. What else? The music throughout isn't that great. The animation, oh my god. I know it's like the same people, or I shouldn't say the same people, same kind of company who did Haikyuu, which is that sports anime as well. And it's been having great
reception.
Great reception. I've caught a couple episodes. I have nothing to complain about at the moment. I haven't obviously watched all of it. But in the sense that drives me crazy is, like, when you're watching Welcome to the Ballroom, I get really kind of irked because the art isn't consistent. Mm-hmm. And I find that's okay if some art is meant to be, you know, disproportionate and kind of having the extra art lines kind of being overly sketched like a comic book. If you do that consistently, that's your own goal, whatever. But there are moments, if you watch certain scenes, because I am so analytical, of course I catch it, is the fact that, like, limbs start to bend and proportions are really off, and it drives me crazy. And it looks like they put more artwork and attention into the costumes than the characters themselves. If you look at some of the faces when they're dancing or accepting awards or anything, they look like they're batshit crazy. Like, they just look insane. And people who competitively dance don't look insane. They have confidence, they have swagger, they have, like, this prowess that's so intense, but it's never, like, insanity unless you're doing, like, a routine of you being insane. Like, it's just like, it's just so many things. And I remember watching with you, I knew what it was trying to do, and you had an inkling, but it was so poorly done, is the fact of, like, in the episode where he's like, it's the stupidest thing I think I could think of in an anime, but I'm just so bitter. It's the part where, no spoilers, a guy is dancing by himself, and his partner's like to another guy is like, oh, do you see me dancing with him? And it's like the shadow like dancing with him, and it's just like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen, and I'm like, it's so dumb. And they don't like, the good thing about Yuri on Ice, one of the many good things about Yuri on Ice, is the fact that they explain everything. They explain like how competitions work, what levels, like what each level means, what not succeeding means, what some of these movements mean, what like talks about some of the points. Yeah. Where this like, it doesn't really get into a lot of detail. It's just like, yep, we're doing this and we're doing this. Not the fact that these moves are really hard and you somehow get them right away, or it's just like magic. Like, and it doesn't take the time, which I totally loved about Yuri on Ice, is like the detail they put into movement. And like, it was so perfect in the sense of like, I watched a lot of figure skating, and watching those motions and watching these people, obviously not people, but drawings move so eloquently, and it's just so graceful, and you're like, oh, that's beautiful. And anytime you watch Welcome to the Ballroom, they have like almost like, they treat them like the Flash, where all of a sudden they like move places and like they don't show the transition. I'm like, these people aren't gods. They aren't like, they don't have this capability in real life. Yes, it looks like they move really fast, but that's because they're moving like in a specific pattern. Like, they don't tell you any of this stuff, and it drives me insane. I could go on for hours. How it pisses me off.
So I think the best way to express it is, you are going to compare it to Yuri on Ice because they have a lot of similar elements.
No doubt.
Yuri on Ice takes the time to actually show the movement, show the choreography, show the performance that exists. Here, the problem is they almost make you like imagine the performance. Yeah. You see like,
it's just like, can you imagine how great that thing would be?
Yeah, it's like they'll do like a still, and they'll like hang on that for like 4 seconds, and then it will cut back to our main character being like, oh my god, that was so amazing.
Yeah, and we're like, people in the audience, and inside I'm screaming. It's like, I don't care what their reaction is. Go back to the dancing.
Yeah. Like, show the movement. Yes. Like, bring us into that. And the characters aren't as likable. They're not as Yuri on Ice.
There's nobody I'm attached to. I couldn't care if any of them like die.
I'm not a professional. I could have never have been a professional dancer. I've never taken dance class or anything like that. So
him watching me.
The fact that like, you know, it doesn't represent what real dancing would be like and whatnot doesn't bug me as much, because I have no idea what that would be anyways.
Right.
I did start to kind of get involved in the characters a little bit. Like you said, like, the main coach seemed really cool, and he seemed like a jackass, and then he seemed indifferent, and now it's like, oh wait, he can see the ghost. Like, it's like he dances with a ghost, and it's like a superpower they're talking about now. So I'm like, you know what Yuri on Ice did not have? Superpowers and dancing alone with a ghost.
Just to be clear, there are no superpowers. It's just that impression that these people move so fast and they're so great at what they do that it just seems.
Well, it's sort of like they're dancing alone, but it's ballroom dancing. You can't ballroom dance alone. But it's so what they're trying to show is that
theoretically you can. But...
Well, you're probably not going to be in a competition for ballroom dancing solo.
Yourself. La, 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 la. Oh, look, he's dancing with shadows again.
So,
perfect.
I think what they're trying to do is, they're trying to show that our main character, who's never danced before, has this innate ability to watch something and then be able to replicate it. So he watched a pair dance, and he could dance the male part without even having a partner. So somebody watched, and then some other character was like, you can see the ghost, or like, you can see
the ghost. He doesn't say
whatever
that,
it is.
Basically, like,
yeah, you
the coach is like, oh my god, he has it. Like, are you sure you've never seen another like pro dancer before? You're doing it exactly like it. And I'm like, come on, like, I just wanted to flip the table over. I'm like, this is stupid. I'm so angry.
So I mean, I have it at a 6. It's fine. Like, it has room to grow. It does have some spots that need ironing out. It's got some kinks in the system, especially when you compare it to Yuri on Ice, which was phenomenal. This is not that level.
I even watched Yuri on Ice the other day because I wasn't feeling well, and I was like, this made me feel good. And the second I looked at Welcome to the Ballroom, it's like, I feel nauseous again.
So, Sugar's not a fan. We're not actively watching that. It's going to be one of those things that when Sugar is in a particularly bad mood and wants to rip apart something, she'll probably watch the next episode.
When I'm enraged.
I'm looking forward to the Everything Wrong With, because it's going to just be... It's going to be a big one on the screen. It'll be like everything, and it's going to be a 5-second video.
5 seconds is everything. You're welcome.
It's going to be everything right with.
I was about to say I should just do a video of everything right with and be like, well, they had an intro and an outro. Good job, like you nailed it.
To be fair to the creators, just because we don't like it doesn't mean it's not good. We just don't like it.
I mean, I'll talk about it later.
Well, I mean...
Obviously, there are people who are going to like it, just like anything. Everyone's going to love something or hate it. I wasn't a fan of Erased. I can understand why people loved Erased. I can understand why people would like Welcome to the Ballroom. I'm not one of those people.
See, and here's the thing. It has an 8.08 on my anime list, so... Lots of people are liking it for what it is.
Who knows? Maybe as we watch along, it will sway me, but I highly doubt it. It's like a first impression you get with somebody. It's like those seconds count. You can always change someone's mind, possibly, but it leaves that horrible taste in your mouth that you cannot get rid of the whole time. And that's all that's on your mind, is how terrible it was.
So what you're trying to say is this would not be an anime that you would initiate newcomers of anime into. No. I'd
say watch Yuri on Ice. It's like I've said in the video, if you can see the forest from the trees, like some of the sexuality and relationships had in there, it is wonderful. It is, the art is great, the music's great, the story's great. Like if you've ever watched figure skating and you have this connection to the characters, you're like, oh God, I hope he does well. I hope he places, like, you know, and you see like some people that just, you know, screw up under pressure and you're like, that happens. Like that sucks, but it happens. And you know,
I didn't like it.
Oh, of course. Well, no spoilers because it's semi-new. We won't get into it. But of course, somebody Jeff likes didn't get first, so he was miffed. But we won't get into it. It
also does a really good job. Going back to Yuri on Ice for a second, where
I could talk all day about it. So that's fine.
Most of these series are going to hinge on the fact that you have your main protagonist, and then you're going to have like an antagonist that you actively want to lose.
Yeah.
Yuri on Ice doesn't do that. It creates characters where you kind of want almost all of them to win. You know they can't, but you're like, they have a main. It's sort of like not an antagonist, I guess, but like a constant rival.
Right.
And unlike a Goku and Vegeta, where one was inherently good and one was like inherently bad, and you hope for one over the other, you kind of are like, I want them both to do well. I want them both to do, and lots of people like the other character more than they like the main protagonist.
And that's fine. All these characters have something about them that makes them likable, or even like to the point where you're like, oh, I kind of hate them, but at the same token, you're like, well, they're really talented. Like, I do hope they do well, but it's just like, as a person, I hope they fail.
It doesn't hinge on you hating somebody to make you go through.
That's the thing.
You love everybody.
And I like the part that it shows because many years ago, I used to do a lot of competitive things, like especially sports. And I love that it highlights the fact that even though each one of them are competing, they're at least familiar with each other or friends. They go out and drink, they go out and have, like, eat at the restaurant, they go out and, like, swim. Like, that's really what happens. Not everyone hates each other because they're competing. Like, yes, some people are intolerable, but you get along with them because you see them all the time. So you basically have to. Not saying there isn't going to be somebody who's not a dick, but, like, for the majority, everyone knows each other, and they're like, hey, I haven't seen you in years. This is awesome. Let's go have supper. Perfect.
And then getting back to the Ballroom, they are definitely hinging on that idea that you want your guy to succeed, but more than that, you want this other person to fail because they are a jackass.
Yeah. We've made you not like him, therefore he shouldn't succeed.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay. It's
just like,
I hate when that happens. It's kind of like when people make choices for you. Whereas this is like, here's a bunch of characters who have different personalities, and you will either be attracted or not attracted to somebody else.
I would have...
Welcome to the Ballroom, I'm just like, I hate them, and I know that's the way they're written, so I'm meant to hate them, and I hate them, and they're meant to do the same
I hate the
thing.
fact that I hate them because they're just being made for me to hate.
Yeah.
Yuri on Ice could work from the point of view of a lot of the other characters.
Oh, yeah.
And
Because
that
that's
would
the
be
thing,
really
each one of
interesting.
them has their own struggle. Like, some of them are the fact that they're new. And they're like, oh God, I'm a small fish in a big pond. Other people that have like anxiety and it's like, oh God, I can perform, but not in this type of crowd. There's other ones that are just like, I think I'm great, I'm the greatest, you know. Everyone's so different.
Yeah.
And I find that's just awesome.
And and it goes back to my whole thing when we were talking about Naruto, where I feel anime as the whole is better when there are people who are kind of equals in everything. I don't like escalation. I don't like the fact that Naruto became, you're either Naruto, Sasuke, or a villain.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you're relevant anymore. Dragon Ball Z became, you're either a Saiyan or you're not.
Yeah.
And the villains only were relevant because they couldn't be
come from
killed.
other planets, you're likely going to kill us, so.
Yeah, and it's like, and they couldn't be killed.
Yeah.
Like, so I like when there's parity and when everybody is kind of on equal footing.
And I think that's what surprised so many people about My Hero Academia, is because it wasn't like, Midoriya is the best, he is the best, you know, that's all there is to it. You get to know a lot of these characters, especially, like, there's more episodes to come, and there's going to be more seasons, and the arcs that are coming up are so good, I can't even tell you. Well, I could tell you, but I don't want to, because I'd be spoiling it. But, like, you get to know more of these characters, and you realize that, like, wow, they are doing really well. They could be, like, number one, and you have this idea of, like, they have better powers than this person, but they're like, but this person also has this quality, which makes them really good at this, and it's just, it's not all about Midoriya. It's the fact that all these kids are really talented, and they shine in their own way. And even, like, I can't say it because it's a spoiler, but I just love that they have great character development individually, together. It's just really good, and it goes into each one of their backstories, and like you're saying, perspectives in Yuri on Ice. Each one of them comes from a different place, you know? And you get to understand what gave them that drive to go into skating in the sense of Yuri on Ice, what gave them the drive to be a hero, like in My Hero Academia. Each one of them had something pushing them to do that. It wasn't always, like, for some of them, I won't say who, where it wasn't always the first idea to be a hero. It just kind of happened, or it came when something else happened. And I find that so fun and interesting that each one of them gets their time to be like, I can be a hero, I can save others. And I think that's, because I know right away, as soon as they mentioned there was a tournament arc, a bunch of people were like, oh, rabble. This is going to be terrible. We're just going to see that Midoriya is the best, and that's all we're going to learn from this arc. And I kept saying, I was like, no, you're not. Like, just keep watching. Don't worry. And then everyone after, it's like, everybody's talking about, like, this is so great. I was like, you're just the person bad-mouthing it, but hey, whatever. But I won't get into that. But anyways, it's just the fact that it's so good, and it's just the fact that everyone is just jumped on the hate train as soon as there was a tournament arc. And I like that they went against what people expected. Obviously, the manga has been going on for a while, before the anime, and just kind of decided that this isn't going to be, this is the best person. We've already distinguished that. They said right at the beginning, I'll be the number one hero. So we don't need to see him being first all the time. He is still a young adult where he's still trying to find out how to get all of his power. He's still trying to find how to do one for all and have that capacity like All Might has, because obviously he can't use his full power yet. We have all these kids kind of honing their skills. We see in later chapters, not spoilers, but like them honing their techniques, so they have new movesets, they have new abilities, they figure out what their limits are to their powers and other things. It's very interesting, so yeah.
So I guess talking about My Hero Academia, we were talking at the start of the podcast about how we were going to kind of give some insight into what we think would be great ways to get the non-initiated into anime. Because now, you know, we talked about in the first podcast that we were together, where for a long time it was just whatever you could find is what you took in.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas now there's like you could tell somebody like, hey, you know what? You get 30 days free of Crunchyroll, and you could watch this. Or you already have Netflix, give this a shot.
Yeah.
You know? Or through other means, you can get pretty much anything. But there's a lot of ways to get it now. So now is like for those who have friends who, oh, anime, that's that stuff for kids, hey, and whatnot. I feel like it's always a good tool to have.
That's the thing that people have to get over, the fact that it's not exclusively for kids. It's like right away it's cartoons, therefore it's kids, where there's a lot of really great anime for adults, for teens, for anybody, really. It's sent at all target groups, so that's something to keep in mind. Obviously, the ones we're going to talk about are likely going to fall in like the mid-range, but it can always be like a little older.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You don't want to necessarily start somebody, for example, unless if you have a friend who's like really into suspense thrillers and whatnot, you're really into, stuff from Hitchcock. Maybe you get them watching something like Perfect Blue. They would maybe really appreciate that, and that would open their eyes to the idea of like, wow, this is something that anime can do that would be really hard to translate. I wouldn't say that the average person, Perfect Blue should be the very first anime thing they watch, because it's it takes multiple viewings to really understand what's going on.
It's very confusing for a lot of people. It's dark. It's
disturbing.
It's disturbing. It's meant to be creepy. It has adult content on almost every level I can think of. It's not meant for like the first time viewer, especially.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely not intended.
But I mean, if you have a friend who's really into Hitchcock, they probably wouldn't mind that.
Hitchcock is totally different from that, in my opinion. But hey,
I think that they would appreciate it on another level than lots of other people would.
Different level, but anyways, let's get into some thoughts.
Yeah, because I mean, we could sit here and just list off all the 10s that we have.
Yeah, I was about to say the top 10s that we
list.
have. We could, but even then, it doesn't necessarily mean it's for everybody.
The first thing that I would say, and it's what I tell everybody who's ever questioned, should I get into anime, is Cowboy Bebop. For a long time, I had that as my favorite anime of all time. That has been usurped at this point, but it's still a 10 in my books. It hits so many of those points that just general fandom should like. I mean, if you have friends who really like Indiana Jones, I could see them really liking Cowboy Bebop. If they like Firefly, they're probably really, really going to like Cowboy Bebop. There's so many elements to Cowboy Bebop.
Especially the Western aspect. I can honestly say my grandfather was totally against the idea of anime, but the second I showed him Cowboy Bebop, he was totally in. He was all in.
I mean, it's a space western. It's
a space western where he was just like, this is awesome. And I was like, yeah.
And I mean, this is nothing new to anybody who's listening, but remember, some of the classics are a classic for a reason. So get them into that. All the Miyazaki films, all the older ones, are probably a really good way to get them in.
Especially for the younger audience, with a few exceptions, like The Cat Returns, I can honestly say for younger viewers, is very fun, almost like Alice in Wonderland without the acid trip and the weird messed up stuff. It's very cute. It has like Anne Hathaway as the lead. Very lovely, very cute, very charming, in my opinion.
We could even go Spirited Away. I mean, maybe like under 7, maybe it would be a
Spirited
little
Away
weird.
Is a little dark for younger kids, in my opinion. Some of the images, anyways. But especially like younger kids, I wouldn't see like teens and stuff. I wouldn't see a problem with.
Yeah, Castle in the Sky would be great, even for, I feel like, the younger kids. Castle in the Sky would be fine.
There is
and the fact that it's all,
there is some violence in there, but it's not horrible.
The fact that it's all under the Disney umbrella sort of really helps, because you tell people like, oh, I want you to watch this anime, and people who aren't into anime will be like, I don't know. Oh, I want you to watch this Disney anime.
Right.
Then immediately, like, that's in North America, that has some weight to it.
That does. It's kind of like saying, oh, it's family friendly. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, so most people can watch this. Doesn't mean it's going to be like violence free, but it means that it's pretty safe.
Yeah.
So that's most of Miyazaki's movies, like the Ghibli movies. There's only like a couple I can think of where I'm like, that's not meant for kids, but like
I don't know. I mean, even something like, and you'd have to preface this, and I would have to preface this by saying we're both teachers, you know, in our life outside of trying to become YouTube stars.
I was about to say that. Being a star is not an intent. It's just, if it happens, it happens. I enjoy anime. Let's make that clear. I'm doing this for the enjoyment and the fact that I wanted to share this with people who, like me, it wasn't ever the fact if somebody asked if I ever became more popular, I was like, to be a star in it. No, I did it because I felt like a lot of guys did the anime content on YouTube, and I wanted to kind of be another type of voice. Not saying there aren't girls, but a lot of the girls do unboxing and cutesy-wootsy stuff, and I just wanted to basically...
Analytics.
I wanted to be just as analytical. I wanted to give my opinions on different anime and even some manga. I wanted to kind of be that voice, and even if I never got a lot of people, I was okay with it. I just wanted to share that, especially with... I know you don't know a lot about me, but I have medical problems. So sometimes I'm just in the house a lot. And so I found, how can I have one passion meet another? And so this kind of worked out for me.
Yeah. But I mean, you were prefacing it by being teachers. Something like Grave of the Fireflies, I would show in a classroom. Depending on age. Depending on age, I would show it. Like, Roger Ebert... It says it's the best anti-war movie ever made.
That's true, but if you're talking about kids, I would say high school at most. And even then, it would be, you'd be having to send permission forms home, and it would just be a mess. Like, it's a great movie. I just find it's very, like, even when we watched it as adults, we did not watch it when we were younger. I don't remember when it was released. But the fact is that both of us got upset. Like, and imagine if somebody younger than us was watching it. I would not advise it. It's not in the sense that it's hugely gory. It's in the sense that it's very emotional and it's very...
it's depressing.
It's depressing in the sense that this is what happened. You should be made aware of it. But it's kind of like Schindler's List, where it's very hard to watch.
Yeah.
And I've only watched it once, and I only intend to watch it once. But that's not to say that I thought it wasn't brilliant, because it was. But I would never have a child watch that. I couldn't, no.
Grade 8 and above.
I would say grade 12, that period. I couldn't, no. Even then, I wouldn't condone it. No.
So I mean, like, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, you get over the hump of the first, 15 minutes, and it becomes, it's a 10. There's a reason why it's what I consider the best.
Like, it's fantasy, it's alchemy, it's brothers, it's just a good story. It also kind of
it has deeper meaning to it. Like,
it goes into like what an anti-hero really is, racism, right? It goes into what war really means. Who kind of can be the face of evil. It's very, very good. Obviously, it's highly rated for a reason, like you said. Again, it's, I would say, a little more mature audience, because there are scenes that are a little more graphic in regards to death. Especially the first opening scene.
Like I said, you skip the first 10 minutes, and I think you're okay.
So definitely, I wouldn't say a younger viewing audience. If we're talking about movies, or if we're talking about anime series... I can't not say it because I loved it so much, is, oh my gosh, A Silent Voice. I loved it, and I think it's a very good lesson for both adults and children about treating people better. I think it's an excellent one. As far as I know, the only one it's different in different countries what's available, but as far as I know, a lot of people can only get the sub version. But I think it's very wonderful. The art is very delicate. I love it a lot. I think it's a really great movie. In regards to anime, what could I recommend?
Now, here's a question that I've had.
Sure.
So, let's say you're recommending to somebody who's the only thing they know about anime is, I like Pokemon and Digimon and that Dragon Ball Z stuff. First of all, do you immediately go to a movie instead? Because movies are only a 2-hour investment?
Like, say you just said that to me, I'd be like, I'd ask if that was because it was the time period, because all the ones you mentioned are earlier. Or I'd say, is it because of the adventure and the fantasy? Because then right away I'd be like, oh, if you like Digimon and Pokemon, I'd say watch Monster Rancher. I think you might get a kick out of that. If you like things that are just
not that they've watched it, but that's what they know. I guess if they know it, I guess they don't have an interest. They know it because of pop culture.
Okay.
They know that Pokemon is an anime.
But then if they just know it, I can tell them anything, because that doesn't say anything of their interest, just the fact that that's what they're aware of.
Yeah, so that's where I'm like, do you tell them to get into a movie because that's only a 2-hour investment? Or, because...
I would instantly ask, what do you like? Like, you said what you know, but that doesn't tell me a lot about you. Like, I can name off 10 movies right now I can think of. I couldn't tell you if I like them or not. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I would
that's
just say
fair.
right away, what do you like? And right away I'd go from there. I'd be like, okay, you like shonen. Okay, what kind of shonen? What kind of time period? Do you like 90s shonen? Do you like more recent? What kind of development do you want to see? Or else if they're like, well, I like shoujo, I'd be like, okay, what kind of...
See,
do you
what if they don't even know those words? What if
I would just say, okay, what kind of story would you like? Would you like an adventure? Would you like fantasy? Would you like something where it's like magic and you have kind of the alchemy?
what if they said, I liked Harry Potter?
Oh, obviously, my first instinct is My Little Witch Academia. It's basically the modern day Harry Potter in regards to likeness. The art is nice. The story is very simple. It runs along the same lines as Harry Potter. It's about being in a school, being with other girls, being with learning spells and magic, and kind of living that day-to-day life in that world. So obviously, that would be the first thing I'd recommend. What else I'd recommend? I'd probably have to go on a little bit more. Like, if they like the magic part of it, or if they like magical girls, obviously be like, well, Sailor Moon, or depending how old they are, Madoka, because I even think that's a little darker for obvious reasons. So it just depends. Like, one I would say up front, which I would recommend, is Assassination Classroom, not just because we're teachers, but in the sense that it's really, really good. Like, the humor is on point, the voice acting's on point. Like, a lot of it's just really funny. And I find there's a lot of life lessons in it. I find that it went on for, 2 seasons. You watched it. You really loved it. I find that there's a lot to love about it rather than a lot to hate.
Yeah. So now, would you only do... Because we talked about how good My Hero Academia is.
Right.
And
I'll never say otherwise.
No. Part of me, whenever I'm kind of... and our wizard friend is bad with this. The first thing he asks about any anime, as soon as we start talking about it, is it done yet? So, with My Hero Academia, knowing that so far we have...
I've said to him straight.
30 some odd episodes, there's going to be potentially hundreds more.
But I was able to sell him on it because I said how great it was.
But for people who are uninitiated to anime,
right.
do you stick with stuff that's already completed?
No, I would give both.
Okay.
Like, especially if somebody says like the basic criteria of My Hero Academia and says everything that's basically in it, be like, you'll love this. Like,
yeah, I like Marvel movies. Then
if you like Marvel movies, you like comic books, you like a lot of these voice actors. If you like kind of school setting animes, be like, bam, My Hero Academia, you'll love it. And the first season's done, so even if, for example, like, that's what I say to people and they say, is it done? Be like, no, but these however many seasons are done, because that's how I've sold a couple of people on Natsume. It's a little different though, because Natsume is more episodic and My Hero Academia has a storyline, a more thorough storyline. But the fact of the matter is you still see how good it is in the first season. You get to see these students, you get to see that there is an actual crisis. There are actual bad people. Like, it sets up this world of understanding, and I find a lot of things hint in the first season that it will be great. And I said it when I first saw it, and I said in videos, and I'll say to the day I die, that there's always something that it hinted at being greater than what it was, and that more things were coming, and that it was planning on keeping its promise. And that was something I noticed right away. And that's why I went right away to the manga to see for sure if it was correct. And it held its promise. Trust me. I can't tell you how many times, like, the manga itself has made me laugh, has made me cry, has made me just extremely happy. It's so well written, in my opinion. I haven't read a ton of manga because I watch more anime. But in the stuff that I've even skimmed, like, I tried reading Attack on Titan, the manga, and it was just so ugly. I'm sorry of anybody who watched it. I don't mean to insult anybody. But, like, I couldn't watch it. I couldn't read it because it just wasn't that attractive. And it was hard to read in the sense of just appealing. Not in the sense of I couldn't read it.
Yeah.
I wish I could read, though. I can read, but it's just, it wasn't pretty. Whereas My Hero Academia, I love looking at it every week because it's so beautiful.
Okay. So now,
yeah,
because I don't know why this is where I'm jumping to now.
No, go ahead.
Somebody says they love Game of Thrones.
They like Game of Thrones. What did they like about Game of Thrones?
everything. I don't know.
Everything.
Let's say they we'll split it up into like they like the combat and the fantasy, or they like kind of the politics of it all. The actual game in Game of Thrones versus just all of the...
Ironically, I think of... I have to think of it now because it's going to drive me crazy. I believe it's... I've watched it and I screw up its name every time. Eden of the East. Which you saw.
Yes, I did.
I don't know if you watched it with me or you just saw bits and pieces, because I remember you spoiled it for a friend of ours by accident because you came in at the wrong time. But I find it's a very good anime because a lot of people actually haven't heard of it. It's a sci-fi action, mystery, comedy, drama, romance, thriller, you name it, it's all of it. And it's rated kind of an R17, which is a violence, profanity, some nudity, and like...
Game of Thrones.
And like there's a lot of like different people, and there's people screwing over other people, and you don't know who are the heavy players in the game. Like, there is a component of a game in the show, and I find it's a really great show. A lot of people haven't seen it, which is a shame. I thought it was really good. And it runs on the idea of, like, terrorism and understanding friendship and understanding other people and understanding what drives other people. I really loved it. I don't think you've watched all of it. You just kind of see me in the background watching it.
Yeah,
I hope you watch it.
I picked up bits and pieces here and there as you were watching.
If you want to watch something that's just like I don't want to say gore fest, but like just like fighting and has just fighting in general and some blood and stuff, like I'll never not recommend Baccano because it's just a blood fest. It's great. It has that part of alchemy. It has that facet of it. If you just want to see like a blood fest and people just punching each other, I don't know why my mind went to Gangsta. That was the one it's like it has very mature content. It has like drugs and sex and all that stuff, but it has that violence and people just wailing on each other and, you know. But yeah, Eden of the East was my first thought.
Interesting. Okay.
In that regards.
So then, here's one, because I would say it's probably both of our favorites.
Okay.
What kind of person would you recommend Steins Gate to if they're not into anime? Who
would I recommend it to? If I'm recommending Steins Gate, I can honestly say I don't think it's for everybody because it relies a lot on science. And it relies on time travel, it relies on that. Like, there are other kind of stories of romance and friendship and loss, but I find it would have to be somebody who appreciates science. Somebody who doesn't appreciate science, who appreciates a good story. Mm-hmm. Because it's one of the few anime I've watched that takes a stab at science and does it so well. Yeah. Where it makes sense. Whereas a lot of people who've done the time travel bit have been like, okay, well, this seems like an awesome idea, but I can't explain it. Whereas it tries to explain how it happens, how there's different timelines, and how things change based on what you do. And it's kind of trying to fix what you've done or to kind of make things better. And in order to do that, it means giving up certain things. And I love Steins Gate. I've watched it a billion times, both in sub and dub. I can't say enough good things about it. But I find it's true. It's not for everyone. Because even in the first, I've said it to many people, and they've said it to me, talking to them at cons or online, about the first 3 episodes. Because the first 3 episodes seem so... I don't want to use the word stale, but it seems like they have no purpose until you watch the rest. You don't understand the gravity of those 3 episodes. Like, in the first episode, you have a lot of promise of it being good, but in the first 3 episodes, you almost like wonder if it will lead to being something good because we don't understand just how important what we see is. Like the, I won't get into it because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't watched it, but like what some of the buildings mean, what some of the technology means, what some of meeting these people mean. And in the beginning, it seems kind of, you know, just things happening. And you're like, well, this is kind of an everyday life that you're watching. But when you see it with all the other episodes, it's just, like, I've watched it many times, and it just gets better on each rewatch. Because there's just so many things you miss the first time. And you're like, when you realize something bigger is happening, you're just like, oh man, like, when did this start getting to this point? And by the end, you realize where things started happening and where things are overlapping, and I wouldn't say it's confusing by any means, but I think it's kind of like watching a really good mystery. Things don't always make sense until you get to the end.
Yeah.
And things are explained, and you're like, oh, that's what that meant, or that's the purpose of that. And I feel like a lot of these things are vehicles for bigger things, but we just don't know it yet. It's like Baccano, which I love, I'm going to keep talking about. The ending is shown at the beginning for a lot of the characters, and until we understand all that's happened, it means nothing to us, really.
Yeah.
And I find it such a great way to start an anime. And, I could go on and on and on and on. But yeah, Steins Gate, I would recommend it, obviously, for somebody who really, I'd say, is into science, enjoys a really good story, like a mystery, or somebody who appreciates good anime. I can say anybody can appreciate good anime, but some people don't see quality when it's there.
That's fair.
You know.
I'm gonna throw a special shout out, and this I only gave it a 7, and on my anime list it only has a 7.77. So it's
what are you referring to?
It's not anything that is mind bending or anything like that.
Mind bending.
Shingeki no Bahamut.
Shingeki no Bahamut.
Genesis.
Oh, that's yeah.
With Favaro.
Yeah.
Like, I feel I don't know how necessarily to explain it. It's just one of those things where whenever I think about if I want to get somebody into just a genre in general, I want it to have kind of mass appeal. And Cowboy Bebop does that as well, where, I can't think of a person in my life who has watched Indiana Jones and hasn't taken something from it,
right.
And so I immediately think of, that sort of storytelling, that sort of, you've got your classic hero and, kind of a little bumbling at times, but, a lot of, reminiscent of the 30s and all the serial adventure novels and the shorts that came before the actual movies and things like that.
Is that where you're leading me with Game of Thrones? Because I can feel like where you'd get that idea, because it has a lot of like fantasy and magic and supernatural. And the thing I connected with, because I thought it was, the artwork was really lovely, don't get me wrong. The first thing I liked about it was the fact that it was kind of its own story, but then it kind of interconnects with like Bible content, and it connects with fantasy, and it kind of weaves all these stories together to make it.
Yeah, and it's not just the Bible. It's like there's Christian overtones in it, but then there's also like things from like Ragnarok and like Norse mythology, and so it's just kind of making a mishmash of all these things that, unless you're big like into biblical study or whatnot, you have a vague idea that of all these things being like, well, I remember they were supposed to be good. They were supposed to be bad. I bet you
that's who that is, or I bet you that's who that's supposed to be. Because I was like, if they have these characters, these have to be there. And no, I'm not huge into religion. I just know because when I was younger, I had to take like Bible studies and other stuff, and then also I've taken a lot of history classes. So I'm like, oh, this is what this symbol means. This is what that means. And so I was excited just on a historical level as well. But I thought it was a lot of fun. And
and Favreau reminds me a lot of an Indiana Jones type, where it's like somewhat of a reluctant hero. Like he doesn't aim to be a hero. He doesn't want to be a hero. He just kind of is thrown into a situation where he, for better or for worse, has to continue going forward in this, bigger plot that's happening around him.
Right.
And again, I gave it a 7 out of 10, but we binge watched it. We really enjoyed it as we took it in and whatnot, and it all happened it was just like, I don't want this to stop. I want to get to the point where we see if he's successful or not. And again, it's nothing that's too heavy. It uses some big, heavy ideological principles, but it makes them in a way that, is very easy to kind of take in.
Well, even the trailer, if you want to give it a go, if you missed the name that he said, it's Rage of Bahamut Genesis, so that's the first season. The second season, I believe it's done, or it's in the middle of happening.
It was this season. It was this
season.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we hadn't watched the second season just because we'd been busy with other things. But the first season we thoroughly enjoyed. It was very good. It was 12 episodes. It's really quick. Watch the trailer. Watch even the intro. It has like a heavy, I shouldn't say heavy metal, but kind of a metal intro, which is very enjoyable. It kind of tells you that you're in for a ride. Very good. We have, what are some of our main characters again, is Kaiser, Rita, Amira, and Favaro. Sorry, not Favaro, Favaro. But even though it's spelled, people I think say Favaro.
Yeah, they pronounce names kind of oddly.
Yeah, they do.
Throughout,
even with like biblical
okay.
names, they say it differently. So don't be put off by it. I think they're aware of it. It's just they decide to say them differently.
I think
like,
they do it purposefully so that you don't take like the entire
so
this is a serious biblical retelling of this story. It's like no, like Alexander shows up.
Yeah, Alexander. Joan of Arc, the different angels. You know, it's just a crazy show and it's very enjoyable. Very much fantasy heavy. Very much like there's even like a part with zombies, which is where Rita comes in, and I find that very enjoyable and cute and kind of scary at the same time. Very good show.
Game of Thrones have things that are kind of like zombies.
That's what I was saying.
Like,
Game of Thrones. I was like, I didn't know that's where you were leading me, but I see where you're going now. But yeah, I honestly can't say many bad things about it. I know when I first heard it was like when they said names incorrectly, it kind of perturbed me, but I was like, I'm sure they just don't want to openly offend anybody who's super sensitive, I'm assuming. Because I know
we offend everyone equally.
We offend everyone equally. But yeah, I thought it was very good. I'm obviously going to watch the second season. It just hasn't come around in the sense of getting to it. But it's definitely planned, so if that says anything about its quality, I feel like the second season, as far as I've heard, the second season's been doing really well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I can understand why you'd mention it.
Yeah, it's not one of the ones that you're going to put up there in your top 10 most likely, but it's also enjoyable. Quite light.
Yeah, and 12 episodes, like I believe they're about half an hour each. It's a very good time. Mm-hmm. And even me, like what was I gonna say? I know one that I really loved. It would be not in my top 10 per se, and it wasn't considered anime for a long time. Was Cybersix.
Cybersix, yeah.
I totally love it. There's so many like lessons, and it's more darker.
That one's hard to come across, though. That's the only problem.
That's a lot of things people hard to find, and it's not for everybody. It's not something I'd recommend to somebody without knowing a lot about them because it's very, I wouldn't say niche, but it's very specific.
It is of the country of its origin because it was not. This is something that we could probably talk about later on in a different thing, but different countries of origin produce very different content.
Right.
Which is why, Avatar: The Last Airbender, despite it having the look of like an anime, it's not an anime. Cybersix, Argentina? Is it Argentinian? Something like that.
So.
And so it has a different mentality around its creation and what it's trying to go through. Yeah.
Or source material, I should say. I shouldn't say the manga necessarily. But.
I mean, if it's an issue of, it being there, really easy to get to, Death Note.
Death Note is a bit darker again, not necessarily for all audiences, but more, I'd say teen or older. Just because of the, obviously, death and how people die is more horrific than others.
Potentially. I mean, I don't know. It's
if we're talking about cutesy wootsy and like something I've watched and I've just had pleasure out of watching it. It's Cheese New Home, Cheese. What is it? Cheese Home, and it's Cheese New Address. So different seasons, very short. I think they're about like 3 minutes each, but there's like 100 and some episodes. But it's very cute, very pleasant. It's about a cat. You can't go wrong. Very much for kids.
Again, I don't know how easy it is to get in North America typically.
Again, I don't know.
Without going through other means.
Based on my analytics, not all of our audience is solely from Canada. So.
That's true, yeah.
For anybody watching, however you take in anime, whether it be through Crunchyroll or through your local video store, you never know what you're going to find. If you happen to see it and you're like, well, I was going to pick it out, but I didn't, but now maybe I will. There's different ones like that. What was the one I watched? I was trying to think. I'll think of it, of course, after we finish the podcast. But there was one where I was like, oh, I don't know. It kind of seems like a crummy video cover, but I was like, maybe I'll watch it. Then somebody's like, it was so great. And then I went back and it was gone. I was like, oh, I hate it. But, of course, a movie that I can always recommend because I'm not saying it's great or anything, but it's very family friendly is Professor Layton.
Yes.
And the Eternal Diva. I love Professor Layton. I've played all the games.
If you know anybody who's into Sherlock Holmes,
as much as I am, yeah, Professor Layton.
Death Note as well. For people who like Sherlock Holmes, Death Note I think would scratch that itch.
A little bit, yeah, especially with L. Somebody being like very intelligent and playing the mind game with somebody else.
Well, we're getting the view from Moriarty as opposed to from Sherlock Holmes.
But yeah, I find it in that aspect it's good. Yeah, there's lots of interesting things, and especially like Jeff's not so much into it, but I've said before, Natsume. It's very pleasing anime in my perspective. From my perspective, I mean, some of the episodes are happy, sad, you name it. But I find it's very watchable by a lot of people. Whereas, which I've been getting more into is Mushishi, which isn't necessarily for everybody because it is dark. It is a much darker version of Natsume, dealing with yokai and so forth.
Yeah, and I mean, if you know people who they're into like that, they're into more kind of dark, a little more, somber type experiences. I mean, Ghost in the Shell and Akira. Ghost in the Shell and Akira are both definitely things that you should introduce them to right away.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think that there's a problem. And lots of people are they're gonna crucify me for this one.
Uh-oh.
Live action versions of anime can give you a little bit of a push. So something like, I know people who would never ever have watched anime if it wasn't for the fact that they first watched Speed Racer, the live action Speed Racer, and then I was like, oh, if you like this sort of thing, you are honestly really going to like anime. Like, this does essentially what anime can do, as well as you can do it in live action. But if you want to see some stuff.
You want to see some stuff.
And that's the same thing too. Like, if you're ever having a problem with trying to get people into anime, ask them if they liked The Matrix. If you liked The Matrix, you really enjoyed it, and you were like, man, but I was kind of wishing that they would go in a different direction in the second and third. There is so much stuff out there that's going to scratch that particular itch, like that will give you those sorts of that sort of thing. Heck, Summer Wars. I haven't watched Summer Wars.
Summer Wars for Matrix?
Yeah, similar idea, like living within a computer system and whatnot. That sort of idea.
If you ever want to see something totally ripped off from the original, like Digimon, then yeah, Summer Wars.
He created the Digimon movie. He can take from his own original works. That's
if you
fine.
wanted to see another movie remade into something else, yeah, that's what you want. I am bitter.
Lots of people
stuff, so.
liked Summer Wars.
I know a lot of people liked it. It's one of those things again where, what's his name? Who makes that movie?
He's so much better at action than anything else. Yeah. But he doesn't want to just be an
his
action movie.
His group of movies, like I can see why people like them. I'm not one of them who likes like. I don't think there's any of his content where I'm like, I loved it.
It's
I'm like, it was
so
watchable.
stratified. Like, I loved all of the combat in A Boy and His Beast, but
The Boy and the Beast.
But everything else just missed the mark entirely. So it's like a third of the movie is phenomenal, and then the other 2/3 is kind of like, I mean, okay, but get back to fighting, please.
Yeah, I just find with a lot of his movies, I don't think I've watched one. Like, again, I know people are going to be mad at me saying that, but I just find none of his movies are incredibly special. I find that he has good ideas, but then he gets too involved in his own head and makes them dip.
Yeah.
In the sense of quality throughout his own movie. And I find, like, he wants to be like Miyazaki and having this wonderful story and world and characters, but then he gets too caught up in himself and then just doesn't end it well. Like, I find that's always his problem with all of his movies, is not ending it well. And the only reason Summer Wars kind of ended okay was the sense that he already did it with Digimon. So, I mean, like, whatever. But that's just me. I'm just being rah. But
and like I said, A Boy and His Beast or whatever it's called.
But anybody who would ask him and be like, oh, this is kind of what I want, something like Digimon, and be like, well, I'm sure you'd like Summer Wars. Like, just because I don't like it doesn't mean you won't.
Yeah.
And that's like, I know a lot of people who love his movies, but I'm not one of them.
And then I would say for any teens, if you're trying to get them into anime and they don't know what anime is, or they're like, yeah, but I don't want like fighting and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Despite how soul-crushing it can get at times, Your Lie in April is brilliant.
Yeah.
And it speaks so much to the kind of things that teenagers have to go through, and how big everything is to that age category, you know, like everything is life and death and everything is so serious. Your Lie in April, first of all, it has beautiful music, so
gorgeous music, gorgeous artwork, gorgeous like storytelling, characters that are lovable and ones that you kind of dislike, but in a way you still like them. I find it's a very I don't want to give any spoilers away or anything, but it's something that will make you cry. I can't think of one person I've recommended it to and didn't cry, but it's a very lovely.
Yeah, I was finishing it at 1:30 in the morning. You were in the other room and you heard what was happening and you were just like crying, right? I
crept around the corner and I was like, "Are you crying?"
Yeah, I cry. I totally.
I know, that's totally fine. I just know, like, certain anime, some people, I was like, oh, did you cry? Or did that make you upset? And they're like, oh, no, that was fine. Whereas, like, other people are just like, oh, I wept so badly. And this is, I think, conclusively something where most people cried.
Assassination Classroom does the same thing, too.
Assassination Classroom.
Another one that would be good for the
Anybody I've
teens.
recommended will make you tear up in the end. Very, like I said, even though it makes you cry, it's very good, very sweet message. Deals with in the sense of Your Lie in April, deals with reality and the hardships that come in life, things that you don't expect, things that just kind of happen, and it's unfortunate, and you have just really great people, and sometimes bad things happen.
Okay, I'm gonna flip gears.
Okay.
Things that you would never recommend to somebody.
Well,
like
what?
even despite their popularity, things that you're just like
something
for somebody who's coming into anime, where they'll be like, you know what, lots of people are talking about blank, and you're like, oh, not right now, because the first thing I would think of is Evangelion. Like,
I find that's as far as I've heard. I haven't watched it. It's very heavy-handed, and so
it is. If you aren't, and I mean, I guess I shouldn't speak for anyone in particular, but it's like, you have to have experienced some other storytelling in a similar vein, or else you're going to be like overwhelmed, basically.
My first thought, and I know people are going to hate me for saying it.
SAO.
No, I'm not going to say it.
It's a garbage anime.
I'm not going to get into SAO because you know what? For some people, I could recommend SAO and be like, I think you'll like this. There's some people, seriously, there are some people I could have been like, yeah, and same with Erased. I don't like it, but I could have been like, you'll love this.
Why wouldn't you put them to .hack instead of SAO?
I'm not saying I wouldn't have recommended it as well. I'm just saying if they asked me for a group like it and be like, you'll like this. Whereas my first thought, honestly, and I know it's been doing decently well and a lot of people really love it, and I didn't love it, is Spice and Wolf. I know you never watched it, but it was so boring. Like, I can't think of anything to be like, when I think about it and be like, oh, you'll love, and then my mind goes blank and be like, dogs? Like, and wolves? Like, I watched all of it. Honest to goodness, I did. I watched the OVAs. I watched them. I watched everything, and it's about adventure, but the adventure is weak. There's romance, but the romance is weak. There's fantasy, and that's something, I know people like it, and it's been doing decently well as far as I understand, but, like, I don't find anything great about it. There's nothing where somebody could tell me something and be like, unless you're like, I love dogs, and
my next one would be Fooly Cooly, and not just because I don't.
It's not for everybody.
The thing, it's just it plays with the conventions of anime so much in its own right that it's like you kind of need that basis before you jump into it. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be like Fooly Cooly.
Another one I'd probably say I wouldn't recommend, like especially for somebody who's new, is Kill la Kill. I would not recommend it. I find it's a lot of things going on, a lot of things that you'd appreciate maybe more so after you became more acquainted with anime. Okay. Especially as it's a deconstruction. I find it's very heavy. It has nudity, it has swearing, it has all of that. I could recommend it to somebody, but it wouldn't be my first choice.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's bad. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying it's very heavy in the sense of, like, and there's a lot going on. Like, if you just looked at it, there's, like, a million things happening animation-wise. and it's just overwhelming for a lot of people. It's too much stimulation. It's just a lot. Even me, I don't have like attention issues as far as I'm aware, but like it was hard to like binge watch it because it just gave me a headache sometimes. And
Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumaya, another one.
Suzumiya, yeah.
Suzumiya, however you want to pronounce it.
I did not like it at all.
I know you didn't like it. And
I know people who do like it, but I'm just saying I can't recommend it because it's like you would like the fact that it's blank. Like I would just have nothing. Be like it's a
deconstruction. Like, you like deconstructions, maybe.
It wouldn't be like my first pick. And even just I wouldn't be like even recommending it to anybody. I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, you have to watch it. I would have been like, well, if you happen to stumble across it, I guess you can watch it. I know a lot of people who just love it, but especially like, oh, that murder they did with the what was it, 8 episodes?
The endless 8.
Don't even get me started with that. But anyways, but even like as somebody who likes fantasy, and it's kind of an older anime as well, I would automatically, boy or girl, would be Card Captors. I loved it. I think you watched it too when you were younger.
Oh yeah, of course.
I find it's just nice. It has action shots. It has fantasy. It has, without all the blood, guts, and gore. You know what I mean?
But I would make sure you try your best to get the uncut version because it takes away from a lot of the soul of the series and like other messages that are actually really important in it that are totally whitewashed due to wanting to turn it for a younger audience. So if possible, I'd do that.
Either or, really. Excuse me.
I guess we're running long. Not long. It's been a long episode. The last one that I'd probably... this is one that I would recommend kind of with an asterisk. Gurren Lagann. I think it has a really good mix of a lot of different genres.
Yeah, I was about to say, again, it would be something I would recommend to somebody who's had a little more time dipping their toes in the anime water than throwing that at them, because again, it kind of ramps up the, not insanity, like, but the stakes.
Like, the creators initially said, they were like, we're going to see how far we can push this genre.
Especially if like somebody's like new to it, I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, watch this, and become slightly overwhelmed, you know what I mean? Because it ramps up really quickly, and then it has different characters and different kind of stories going on. Not to say it's not good, because we watched it, we both liked it. Yeah. But I just find it would be, for a first time, it would be a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Maybe, but who knows?
If you like general fantasy, I would also suggest Slayers, even though that's a little older. It's hard to come across. I mean, I own it simply because I happen to just... I loved it when it was. I loved it, and then I found the DVDs just randomly back in probably like 2006. Like I happened upon them. But just in terms of general fantasy and whatnot, I feel it scratches the itch really well.
Yeah. So there's different ones we can talk about next time, but I guess we just wanted to talk about where we were, kind of the things that we'd recommend. I don't know if it was that clear for you guys. We kind of went all over.
We recommend everything.
Everything. No, but, maybe we'll get into different genres and things, some that are darker, some that are lighter, all that jazz. But again, thanks for joining us. Thank you, Jeff, for joining me.
Of course.
But
anytime.
Until next time, we'll see you later.